This is not a normal podcast. Welcome to this real collective inquiry into what patriarchal sex is, how both men and women hold that paradigm in place, and how we can be all living beyond it together. My name is Devashi Shakti. I've been working with clients privately for 30 years and have been a leading guide in women's sovereignty with the Tigress Path for decades. You're invited here to listen in on these conversations I'm having with interesting people from many countries and cultures around the world, highlighting women and men who are contributing the needed change and education to go beyond the patriarchal paradigm in sex, intimacy, and relating. The spell is already broken, patriarchy is done, and we are co-creating the new paradigm right now. While it might seem fantastical that a woman is capable of ecstasy and orgasmic expansion and cosmic connection in childbirth, it's because it's the opposite of what the curse in the Bible on women says. It's the opposite to how the medical system treats women in birth. And it's even really contrasting for mothers who had children in circumstances that are very different to ecstasy and pleasure and cosmic connection. Due to fear and misunderstanding of what woman is capable of, this is why it's so barely known about. There are tens of thousands of women that have been exposed to this information. And we know that by the number of women who have viewed the film that I'm about to tell you about, because birth is an actual rite of passage. It is so essential for humanity to grasp this for the benefit of literally every single one of us. And while today's guest, Nicole Moore, and I both see the place of integrative medicine in childbirth and maternity care, the thing is that it's not just a physical process. It's a shamanic, cosmic portal of change, as Nicole rightly says in the episode. And I personally studied with pioneers of natural ecstatic birth, including Elena Tanetti Vladimirova. And my friend Nicole has the honor now of continuing her work since Elena has retired. And this subject is so relevant in the collective inquiry of going beyond the patriarchal spell, because if you don't already understand that link, this is why you need to listen to this episode, actually. And the film, if there is one film that I could absolutely recommend to everyone to see, children included, it is Elena's film, Birth as We Know It, because it has the power to transform how you understand what a woman's body is, what it's really for, and what it's capable of. And also, this is where it's no longer just about childbirth itself. It's also how the real thing of that crosses over into sex and intimacy and what that could really be. Because I'm sure I don't need to explain to you where babies come from, but sex and birth have been kept very, very separate. And I think this has everything to do with how distorted sex has become because of the conditioning that people have around it. And also the conditioning around childbirth having to be a dreaded ordeal that women need to pre-plan their surgery experiences for instead of allowing the natural process. We have so much visual imagery in our minds of women screaming and lying down, defying gravity in hospital beds in the movies that we watch, the very patriarchal version of birth. There's actually so much to learn about sex and intimacy from the real thing of what natural childbirth can be. And part of the reason I invested so much time into studying spiritual midwifery in my 20s, it was to counteract the patriarchal approach that is so present in much of neo-tantra and so-called conscious sexuality work, because for me, it brought it all back to the source of trusting what was moving through me at the time, which was the beginning years of bringing a very female approach to yoga for women's bodies and later to somatic psychotherapy. Women's bodies are so extraordinary. We as women are conduits to open portals in direct cosmic connection in ways that men cannot. And this is also designed to happen in sexual pleasure, but that also can't happen from patriarchal sex. It's what everyone is missing out on, actually, by not exploring what lives beyond the dominant paradigm. And firstly, it is for women, it is on women to remember what we are capable of, to own that, and for men to support us in reclaiming our full potential. And just before we go into this conversation that I recorded with Nicole, I firstly want to honor Elena and Tatiana and all the women who literally risk their personal freedom to keep this sacred education being passed on through the generations. Because, yes, guys, you are not the only ones putting yourselves on the line out there. Wise women are constantly putting themselves on the line to support women to have these incredibly empowered experiences. So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining with me today. I remember how you and I first met. You had already been doing birth work and been a mother for years. But when we first met, we were both receiving Elena Tanetti Vladimirova's incredible ecstatic birth work. For me, I had seen her documentary film Birth into Being and felt just so profoundly transformed by what's possible for a woman's body, for female physiology, for such a connected way of bringing a new spirited child onto the planet. It just completely rocked my world to see Elena working with that. And so we got to meet in that environment of her training. And yeah, so maybe we'll go into where you are now, but what were you already exploring in terms of birth and birth work before that point, Nicole?
So I had amazing births, which I'm eternally blessed. I was very fortunately surrounded by a beautiful community of women that through the stories and and through meeting the beautiful children that had come through them, I was opened up to having what I now see as kind of dream births on the land, completely not intervention free, and really well supported by a lay midwife with over 30 years experience, and as I said, a community of women that it was second nature to all talk about home birth as if it was a given. So I had those amazing births, and through that, I was already making films, and through
Yes.
that, I really wanted to share, what I had uncovered. And so I started researching every birth film possible, and of course, came across Birth as We Know It. So Elena made two films, Birth into Being and Birth as We Know It, and
Oh,
uh,
yes.
they depict, yeah, they depict birth in all its natural glory, completely physiological births. Um, Although there is also the contrast footage of a cesarean birth and even some very controversial at the time circumcision footage.
Mm,
But mainly these films are opening women up to the possibilities of what is available to us through
yeah.
birth. The the bliss and the pleasure that we can feel in the of birth, but also what's available to the children that are actually born that way and who receive that imprint of coming into life
Yes.
completely supported and loved and welcome, and like it's like a blissful experience. um and if that's your foundation for life, then you're
Yeah.
winning. So
Oh, yeah.
that's what Elena, yeah. So that's what Elena really opened me up to, was the idea that we can actually create that kind of an imprint for others, gift it to them through, process work and their willing intention to absorb those imprints. And that this was useful not only for women giving birth, but for anyone looking to um, create the foundations for their life that would serve whatever their dreams may be.
Mm,
Um, so, yeah, I went on to work with the Birth into Being method, particularly around preparing women for birth, because that was the world that I was in for the first
yes.
10 years. Um, I had, two young children myself. Most of my peers were still in their procreative period. And, you know, I was very involved at my children's Steiner school. So there was just, always a rich community of people having babies. Now that I've progressed a little bit in years, that demographic that comes to me through my own life has slightly shifted, and I do still work with women preparing for birth, but yeah, I'm also doing teaching and stuff, so it's a bigger
Yes.
field now of people who are also looking to do work with their birth imprints in order to realize their dreams.
Yes.
Again, whatever those dreams may be, whether it's business or arts or politics. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to work with somebody around their birth imprints that might go on to, influence the world with that.
Yes. And I guess in the past, I can't even remember what year it was that we did that training. Do you remember? It's probably a minority of women that were tuning into this. And now it's um, much more well known about.
Yeah, so the word imprints is definitely having a little bit of a wave of momentum, which is fantastic. Um, yeah, it was 2009, I believe,
Mm,
that we were
mm.
in Melbourne together. And yeah, there is a wave of awareness, and it would be great if it could be so much more. Like,
Yes.
I am so convinced. I feel almost evangelical about it, that if we were able to give a beautiful, blissful, gentle, loving, wholesome welcome to everyone, then we could shift, the energetic patterns that we've been perpetuating for the last few centuries that are
Yes.
taking us down a very unsustainable path,
Yes. I
like,
hear you. Yeah, all of the healing work and breath work and all these things that people are doing, like, I mean, it's all great. And at the same time, it's kind of trying to stabilize a baseline that we didn't get to be born into the world with. And so when that's someone's starting point, my gosh, that's like a phenomenal opportunity to be in full potential from the beginning without so much to undo and to unravel in the trauma sense. So
mm,
you've stepped in as the trainer for Elena, who has stepped back now or is in the process of stepping back from teaching. And so, yeah, it's really great to see you in this role. So you're a mother who had incredible natural births already. You are a filmmaker. You are a facilitator and like a natural leader. In your energy and very community orientated. But I remember you were also doing, I think you'd made a film around uh, the natural training. What did you call it? Uh,
the film was called Nappy Free,
yes,
and it was all about elimination communication.
yes,
And um, So that's in Australia we call diapers nappies. And so it was all about raising your children without nappies slash diapers. I made that film between 2003 and 2005 because I revisited it.
Yes.
I'm just going on to my video for the thing. Um, I revisited it and added footage about night times because it was one of the biggest questions, and I hadn't included it in the film.
Oh,
Um, that practice is really about innate communication. It's about
yes.
really trusting your intuition and the nonverbal cues that a baby gives. And
Yeah.
I actually got interviewed by a university. Somebody was doing a study on telekinetic communication or telepathic communication. And
Mm,
I got interviewed about that. And what was interesting when you apply this process of knowing intuitively when your baby needs to pee or poo, um, the telepathy of them telling you it's time uh, is proven by the output. So it's a
yes.
really fascinating thing because it's not left up to chance. It's like they either pee or poo or they don't. So you
Yes.
get affirmation whether it was right or wrong.
Yes.
But
And there's somatic cues in there, I'm assuming as well, from
it's
expressions and sounds. And yes.
there are so many layers. And
Yes.
what's really amazing and um, mind opening and heart opening is that it shows us that we are communicating on so many different levels. It shows us that we are really only operating with a fraction of the senses that are available to us.
That's right. That's right. So it's such a beautiful meeting of instinct and intuition and being attuned to that. And that's like the primal celestial divine channel all the way through that in the ecstatic birth is all about a woman experiencing that in her own body in the actual childbirth process. And just so we can catch up anyone listening, Nicole, about, what were some of the highlights of birth as we know it so that people can hear, what's really possible. Because I remember imagery of women birthing in the ocean and stories about dolphins and just the incredible coherence of being with the whole process without um, so much pain and tension and contraction, and this ability to meet sensation and to be with it so intimately and profoundly that there's a very like wild and raw, but peaceful energy that is coming through the woman and her body and her channel for the baby to enter into the world with. What more would you add?
Oh, well, there's so many highlights in that film. I think
Yes.
probably one of my favorite scenes is that you see Tatiana Sagunas, who was one of the
Mm,
Russian midwives working with Igor Chukovsky and Elena at the time that that film was being made. Um, and she's birthing her own baby in a Perspex tub in an apartment in Moscow. And the
yes.
footage is grainy, we're in the late 70s. But she's there looking off to the side, and you see that she looks like she's a million miles away. And then she slowly comes back into like here and now. She kind of moves her head, and you see her arriving in her body. And she shifts her hand, and the camera just pans down. You see her little children there, just smiling at her, waving some incense around. And then you see her hand just go down and touch outside her yoni. Her baby is crowning. And from the look on her face and the calm presence, the little smile she gives her other children, and then you see that the baby is crowning, it's like it's such a moment of divine grace and of complete presence and mother love. Like she's 100% there for her other children. She's 100% in her body. It's just like, you know, you can't believe that it's real when you juxtapose
Yeah.
that with what we are generally fed in sort of dominant paradigm media
Yeah.
around that moment of crowning, the ring of fire. And so,
Yes.
so that's one of my favorite, I'd say that is my favorite scene.
I understand. I remember it's so beautiful. Her consciousness was so vast and
Yeah.
the energy was incredibly peaceful. And I was thinking of her when I said peaceful before. And there's this term, Nicole, that's come through the work that I do with women because the tigress path, it's all about that primal instinctual energy and our higher chakras intuition as well, and the full embodiment of that. This term primordial grace
Mm.
has come through that really captures the frequency of like fully embodying that divine feminine current.
Yeah, absolutely. And that so applies to birth,
Yes.
primordial grace.
Yes.
I love it. My daughter's middle name is Grace.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. And so to orientate us to the theme of this podcast, just before we press record, you were saying how when it comes to birth, um, this is a really deep feminine version of it, as opposed to the typical more patriarchal birth circumstances that a lot of women are just put through by default without realizing more of what's possible in the potential of their bodies and in the potential of birth. And so let's talk about that, and then we'll go towards relationship intimacy as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that the surrender that is uh, required for physiological birth and the trust that a woman needs to have in her body, in herself, in her capacity to come back from being stretched in such a way. And I'm not talking physically, I mean, when her psyche and her heart and every aspect of her being is stretched in labor, and the strong sensations and the places that she needs to go to in herself to
Yes.
surrender in that way. um, her trust in herself, her trust in life, her trust in her body, all of that is a deep feminine skill, to let go,
Truly.
to know that you will be able to start again or be back in your body, to know that you have capacity that is so vast. And yeah, there's many different stages of labor, but um transition is the part where a woman generally says things like, I can't do this, I can't go on.
Hmm.
But this is a sign of the next phase that is about to begin. And it also often precedes a moment of, cosmic surrender. And I definitely remember that from both of my births, of that
Mm.
moment of, okay, well, whatever happens, I let go. I give myself to love. I give
Yes.
myself to this being.
Yes.
And it's that letting go and that giving of self over to, the sensations that are moving through you, to the life force coming through you. It's that allows your cervix to just do that final stretch, and out comes the baby.
Yes.
And
And
it's cosmic, totally cosmic.
absolutely. And what profound trust a woman is experiencing in that cosmic primal connection, profound trust from the inside out to have that way and to have that outcome. And so the level of surrender that you're speaking about is is such a like a full feminine glory embodied experience. Like it is the epitome of female embodiment in so many ways. It's the most intense expression of it. And it's a deeply spiritual experience, a profound initiation for a woman. Like it truly is, because when allowed to be with that naturalness, that is what's happening. That's the process. That's the outcome. And so, however, in the patriarchal birth scenario, where there is not that innate trust, there's not even an intention to create the environment to support that natural momentum. So, is there something you'd like to say around that?
Yeah. Well, look, there are more and more, there are hospitals that have birthing suites where women are encouraged to have some influence over their environment. So, they would choose to have dim lighting. They might bring in some of their own furnishings from home, things like, and of course, play their own music. Um, so there is an attempt. However, the incidences of birth trauma are just as high as they ever were.
Yeah.
The desire to control birth per se is just as strong as it has ever been. The witch hunt is on.
Yes.
It's we can't pretend that
Yes.
it's not a witch hunt and that it's not, and it is having a very, very big impact all over the world, but especially here in Australia. Uh, and that desire to control birth and to, use statistics and a kind of data-driven approach, the use of machines to monitor and to track. Um, it's part of a system that doesn't really support the women. It's there to support, the people that work in that environment to, keep them safe from legislation,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, it's a witch hunt. So, and
Yes.
the witch hunt is not just about the birth workers, it's also about the women giving birth or choosing to give birth in ways that are fully empowering to them. The system isn't supporting that. I'm being a little bit hesitant with my words because just in the last week, there's been another big blowout where somebody chose to free birth,
I
and
saw
she's a
that.
bit of a
Yeah.
public figure. I'd never heard of her before or anything, but you know, apparently she was a public figure, an influencer, and she was in turn influenced by an influencer. And she attempted a free birth, which ended up really badly. In the fine print, I've read that she had a pre-existing medical condition. They never talk about those things in the
Yeah.
headline.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, it's difficult.
That's
It's
right. So
difficult
there's this,
times.
sorry, I was going to say there's this negative stigma around natural birth or home birth, most definitely free birth, which is not for everyone. And and that's part of the self-responsibility of that initiation. All levels of natural birth, there's a high degree of personal intimacy with the process. Like you can't hand your power over and expect a great outcome, right? That's not the journey of what this is.
No, and it's a source of great sadness to me that women today are being asked to be stronger than ever. So, not only do they have to prepare their bodies and minds for the work of bringing a baby through, when our dominant paradigm thinking doesn't support all of that, but on top of that, they have to also um, answer to this because the culture is so kind of fear ridden around natural birth and around alternative birth choices, other than institutionalized birth. The woman has to then deal with family members. Very often she has to deal with a partner who is being, adversely influenced by either his family or his co-workers or whatever, it just means that a woman has to work, like 3, 4 times as hard to be able to choose the birth that she wants. And this sucks because that's wasted energy. So, she's sort of up
Yeah.
against this big industrialized version of patriarchal birth. And even just to choose to birth at home or to choose to birth with a chosen care provider instead of the person that's on duty that day, she has to kind of dig in a little bit and fight. And what I get upset about is that fighting energy uh, is what's the word for it? Contraindicated. Well,
Yes,
it doesn't it doesn't
yes,
gel with oxytocin. A
that's right.
woman should be
On a
free to
nervous system
generate.
level,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
she should
fight
be
and
spending
flight.
her whole pregnancy being juiced up and getting to really know her oxytocin receptors and, learning how to navigate pleasure pathways so that she can turn strong sensation into pleasure. She should be learning how to open her throat and open her cervix and navigating relationship change rather than taking on the system.
If you are a woman, I want you to know about the work I do when not speaking on this podcast, which is all about how to live from your embodied womanly presence for your health on all levels, as well as it being a feminine spiritual path in itself. And it has a way of effortlessly unlocking your unique gifts to be a voice for women in the way that you are called to do so. And this happens through a facilitated training called Women's Somatic Sovereignty Certification. It gives you the chance to restore your own female nervous system, which I specialize in, while gaining the skills to be an effective somatic professional supporting women to thrive. Come to one of my free workshops to know more about this. We have a fantastic community of women to learn and to grow with, which has been going strong since 2005. So see the links below this episode for more on certification training. Yes, yes, absolutely. And so taking on the system is like being in a pretty high state of sympathetic nervous system arousal rather than shifting into the parasympathetic and all the preparation over the many months leading up to the actual physical birth. That's a really precious time to practice entering altered states of consciousness and creating the intimacy to trust her body from the inside out. And so the environment that would be conducive to that and supportive to that is, it seems to be primarily not offered because of uh, this operation, this machine, this institutionalized, medicalized birth. And some cases it needs to be, but in a lot of cases it doesn't. And so there's so much intervention that's sometimes unnecessarily happening, it seems. And there's also money to be made from those interventions. And also yeah, the fear of litigation. So not allowing the full potential of birth because of these things. And if we talk about patriarchal birth, I mean, the way that I see patriarchy itself essentially is quite simply fear, not just fear, but terror of the feminine and not knowing how to be with that. So whether that it's in an institution, in a man or a woman, I don't know if you agree with that, Nicole, but over time, this is how I understand it now. It's such fear and mistrust of the feminine.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when birth was first, when we look at the history of how birth came to be institutionalized, it was, male curiosity to begin with. There was some
Wow.
famous king, I can't remember, but that, wanted to be at his wife's births.
Oh, King Henry, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. And then, um, yeah, as time went by, getting involved with women's business and everything to the point that in the 1930s, it was already at 70% in America, 70% of birth being um, institutionalized. And it's just gone on and on since then. Um, and yeah, it's harder and harder. I mean, the home birth community in Australia is still alive and kicking. There
Yes.
are some increased advances around, government subsidized home birth, but the midwives that service those kind of outpatient programs, they are beholden to hospital policies
Yes.
around women's weight and other risk factors, weight, age, what their previous births were like. Whereas, a lay midwife is obviously looking more at like, who the woman is now when she's assessing safety or any physical needs. Whereas, in the hospital system, home birth programs, women can be risked out because of previous experiences. And that's really relevant when it comes to what we call VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean, which is a really, um, don't have personal experience of it, except that I was one. Um, my
Yes.
mother my mother gave birth to me vaginally after having an emergency cesarean with my sister. But
Mm.
what I understand is that for women who ended up in births that they really didn't want and that was far less than what they were hoping for, um, in terms of, an emergency cesarean or, separation from their child following a cesarean, all the different things that can happen, and feelings that women are left with after a high intervention birth like that, especially one that was unexpected, um, having a redeeming vaginal birth after a cesarean is a really important piece for their ongoing motherhood and their womanhood. Many, many women feel, like they're kind of reclaiming themselves when they've undergone a previous violation in birth.
Yes, yes, yes. That restoration after experiences of fragmentation is essential for her embodied sense of self as a woman, as a parent, as a partner, and yeah, I mean, we could discuss that until the very end of all the ripple effects of that.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to bring our listeners in and really invite both women and men into this realization of just how far away the dominant momentum in the world is from this optimal um, imprint that childbirth could be having for the coming generations, and what it would take to align with that, and starting with the personal relationship. So there's so much in this. This is obviously a woman's relationship with herself and her own body and her full spectrum feminine energy. But I know that you have been in a partnership for a long time and so deeply immersed in birth work all these years. So, what would you like to share with, knowing both men and women are listening to this, around what would be supportive in relationship intimacy to support a woman, getting closer to this, let's say, optimal birth potential?
Well, one of the things that I love to give to my private clients, like sometimes I work with clients, one on one, couples that will come and do a private retreat, something in preparation for their births. And I always give them the homework of, uh, really consciously expanding the woman's capacity for strong sensation. And the best way to do that, of course, is to sit on the edge of orgasm for, extended periods of time to really give her um, that sense of resiliency so that um, instead of an orgasm that kind of like creeps up and kind of overtakes the moment, or that a woman falls into. Instead, cultivating that really orgasmic space of just, moving towards and away from and towards and away from. So really inviting very conscious, extended lovemaking, um, as part of their birth prep is,
I'm so happy you brought that forward.
you know,
This
right.
this is yeah, and it's not just about the birth experience and the outcome and what the woman can feel, although you've specifically answered the question around that. I'm looking at in this moment how it's in a man's favor as well to be
Yeah,
operating in that
well,
way sexually.
totally, because he is also in preparation for the birth, in engaging in that kind of very conscious extended lovemaking. He is also cultivating his capacity for being completely present with, subtle waves of sensation. There is nothing more monumental than new life entering the world, and it requires absolute presence. So he needs to be able to, work with his partner's breath, his or her partner's breath. Um, the birth partner is there to support the birthing mother. And, regardless of if it's an active partner, maybe it's her mother, but the idea of cultivating presence is is a vital part of birth preparation. But in terms of couples that are also intimate together, like, it's going to have wonderful ripple effects. They're going to have a great time together. They're going to build on their trust and intimacy. Their communication is going to be like enhanced by all of this, well, presumably.
Yes.
And, it's going to be generally pretty yummy. And it enables the woman to be able to not only build and um, strengthen her neural pathways for oxytocin, she's also increasing her capacity for being with strong sensation. And some of the sensations in labor might be pleasurable, and some of
Mm.
them might not be. But
Yes.
rather than having her body, her mind, her being contract, we want her to be able to stay with. So hence
Yes.
the orgasmic edge.
Yes, definitely. Yes. So whether it's pleasurable or otherwise, it's intense. It's intense sensation for her to meet and feel into and allow as a sensory experience in her body. And so what you're really saying here is like all the sexual experiences leading up to then, most definitely during pregnancy, if not before, can be part of the preparation. And that means coming out of the typical patriarchal sex behaviors so that there is more attention on the woman receiving. So, all the men that want women to be more feminine, just speaking to that psychology for a moment, you can support her to do that. The more that you tap into your own capacity for expanded pleasure in your body as a man, because that's going to call that out in the woman that you're with, and not only for preparation and the intense, profound, life-changing, unforgettable experience of birth, but parenting after. Like the level of presence, like, and the initiation that a man also needs to go through, because part of what's in the patriarchal sex paradigm is that there is no or very little attunement to the woman's experience and her needs after giving birth. And so a woman is much less likely and able to participate in patriarchal sex if that's what was happening prior, after birth, because she's just had such a life altering experience. Perhaps her body is different or feeling a little different. And she's got a constant demand of baby or more than one. So having to sort of service a man and having no attention centered properly on her in that process feels like a chore for women. And so for men complaining about women not wanting to have sex or not wanting to have it more often, it's really about the kind of sex that's been offered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also bringing it back to the birth, if they have journeyed, if they've done their prep and they, if all the communication channels are open, the love is flowing, and if they both have a birth experience where um, that they felt supported and able to drop into that place of surrender, it can also be cataclysmic for a man. He's
Yes.
also becoming a father in this moment. And he's also traversing all kinds of emotional gateways and um, doorways into new aspects of himself. Many men will say, like, my universe completely shifted on its axis
Yes,
that night
yes.
when I saw that little baby body there and realized, like, that I will now protect this being with everything I've got until my dying day.
Yes, yes.
Like
Witnessing that
it
miracle, hey?
activates archetypes. Yeah, it activates archetypes. And if the two of them together have this experience, then they can really step into a, a beautiful way of relating, like um so from my own experience, in my first birth, it was like 24 hours or something. It was a complete rite of passage story. And my partner um, was amazing. He was naked in the pool next to me, breathing, you know, very humbly obeying any request or, like I remember at one time he was sort of shifting position and I was in the middle of a contraction and I was, don't move, you know, because it was making the water rock inside the
Yeah.
bathtub. And I was like, stop, stop that, like it was like, and he just, gracefully did what he was told. And, it was fantastic, the ability to step out of the way and really be with what was there. And, like the investment absolutely paid off. We had a massively amazing birth that has carried us all
Mhm.
these years.
Mm.
And likewise with my daughter's birth, except the story that I wanted to tell and the juxtaposition is that in her birth, it all happened very, very fast. She was like an hour and 20 minutes from first contraction to
Whoa.
coming out. And it's like the story of the ultimate surrender. It's like I knew what was going to happen. I knew my body was capable. Uh, it was that sense of like, I'm going into the tunnel and I'm going to come out with the baby in my arms. That's it. My surrender was absolute. Um, and it was all happening very, very, very fast. And at one point, I think I must have needed something from him. And he very casually, but I've never ever forgotten it, 20, almost 21 years later, he said, yeah, 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 like a little bit impatiently. And I think it was because he didn't realize how fast things were moving. And none of us did. Like it was only me and him there. And we,
Right.
right up until the last two pushes, um, or the last two contractions, I should say, I didn't actually push. Uh, but that moment of him kind of negating me, like it stayed with me forever. And so the point is that these moments in birth, these little micro moments, the veils are so thin in this powerful experience that the things that happen there can have a very strong effect um, in either direction throughout a relationship. And like I'm saying, like literally, it's two words that he said, yeah, yeah. And 21 years later, I still remember it. I remember
Wow.
the knife in my heart that was his
Mm.
impatience in that moment. So I'm not dragging him over the coals. You know, we're still
Mm.
together. I'm still glad, you know, I'm still eternally grateful that he is the father of my children. Um,
Yes.
but you know, him showing up in birth for me absolutely has set this incredible paradigm of relating that has managed to get us through the last 26 years together.
Wow. So 26 years, that's really, really beautiful.
I know
And
it's an absolute feat. It's like a miracle. In this day and age, it is a miracle.
it is actually. And thank you for sharing that really personal moment and the frustration, I guess, because it just shows the extraordinary level of sensitivity that you're in as a woman in that experience and how impactful even small, seemingly small things are, because the quality and coherency of the field that you need to be in is just paramount, and nothing can disturb that. So this sense of tuning to that and having reverence for that, having reverence for this fully embodied primordial grace experience. um, where I'm going with this is I want to say this is not just something for the woman's favor. This is like the optimal experience for all, for everyone involved, for the baby, for the man, for the marriage or the partnership, and for the parenting and the woman's body and sense of herself and intimacy. Like everything is impacted, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the and it's so sad because it's so available, but because of the fear paradigm, you know, so many people are choosing to give birth in institutions that do not support uh, you know, that level of sensitivity. And that's yeah, really sad. Really sad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, having known women who've worked in or outside of the hospital birth environment, I'm aware of how many things go, quote unquote, wrong in a hospital. Like there are there are just so many traumas that happen. So many birth experts are saying, hospital is not actually necessarily the safest place to be. That's just the stigma and part of the patriarchal birth paradigm. We need it when we need it, right? But to just have that as the default without this attunement to the optimal experience is something I hope to see humanity evolve away from.
Yeah, well, last year here in Australia, there was a massive birth trauma inquiry, and hundreds of women were so courageous to share their personal stories,
Yes.
you know, of either physical or emotional violation. And, you know, the devastation, because birth is such a you know, such a huge kind of life milestone, and you want it to be so special for the whole family. And yeah, you know, the devastation that women feel when it doesn't go the way that they would have liked is it can be absolute, and it leads to incredible statistics around um, postnatal depression. The number one cause of death in new mothers is suicide. It's pretty
Mm.
severe, you know.
Wow.
It's just such a powerful and important experience in a woman's life. So, yeah, it needs absolute support from the birthing system and from all of society so that we can hold couples and families as they go towards these milestones and beyond. So,
Yes.
and there is a huge amount of information out there nowadays, and it, Instagram and social media is a bit of a double-edged sword in that way,
Yes.
um, because, you know, free birth should not be a trend. It's a
Mm.
viable choice for people who are taking full responsibility for their actions, and by that that means educating themselves and, you know, getting their needs met, not just going right up to 38 weeks and then asking a few questions in mothers groups online. Um, that just does my head in when you see that sort of stuff.
Wow, yeah.
Um, so, social media can encourage people in some ways. And then on the other hand, it's absolutely amazing because the wealth of information and the culture creation that is possible through the sharing of people's experiences and imagery is amazing. And like you said, that you remember certain scenes from Birth as We Know It, that film has opened so many hundreds of thousands of women up to the idea of physiological birth being something that can be blissful, that it
Yeah.
is possible. We didn't even speak about it. I can't believe it. But you asked that question about what are the memorable moments from that film, bringing people up to speed. But the other scene that goes without saying is the most memorable scene in the film, it's just the other one is my personal favorite. This is the most memorable, is of somebody having an orgasm whilst the baby is coming down through the birth.
Yes. In
And,
the water, yes.
prior to that film, people knew about the potential of orgasmic birth, but there wasn't any proof. And in this footage, which was amazingly intimate footage that Elena captured while Amber was giving birth, is she's having this rolling orgasm. There is absolutely no doubt as to what is going on. It's a full close-up of her face as she gets this massive wave of ecstasy moving through her. And it shows people without a shadow of a doubt what is possible in birth. And it's not about setting another goal or any kind of achievement around having an orgasm during birth. It's about opening up to the possibility that birth can be orgasmic, that it can be orgasmic in nature, that you can have this feeling of opening and expanding and of being in contact with your bliss, whether or not you actually have an orgasm or not.
Yes, yes, and
It's
you're right.
always important to preface any talk around orgasmic birth with that because it's really not about having any goals.
Yeah.
Um, but it's about being open to the possibility of pleasure. And there's people doing amazing work in that regard in the birth world as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That scene with Amber, it really is the epitome of that film. Thank you for bringing that up.
How could we
And
forget?
totally, totally. It's been a while since I've seen it. But truly, truly, that was the most transformative part of it to take in for me. And it is important to say that with the orgasmic reality in birth, it should never be a sense of pressure on a woman, but to really hold it as the true potential of what could be possible when it's right. And there's so many circumstances around that, the depth of inner work. I mean, Amber is a profound soul, right? I think she'd gone very deep in herself and in her body before that birth and after. So the level of intimacy in meeting oneself as a woman that's involved, oftentimes I've also heard stories of women just spontaneously having that too without being profoundly deep in their inner work. But anyway, the potential reality of birth is so extraordinary as an initiatory transformational force of nature that is, I want to say again, both for the initiation of woman into motherhood and also the initiation of a man into fatherhood. Because for him, if a man is witnessing the birth and he's experiencing a woman in her full glory, opening physically as the channel that she is, I believe that imprint is so much more powerful than other fragmented, distorted imprints that a man can have in his visual cortex. Like I believe this is like the main thing that could dissolve patriarchy in a man's mind and psyche and have him attuned to a woman and a woman's sexual energy in a different way because it is such an awe-inspiring experience to witness that changes us. And so there's something about that being more prominent, that being more forthcoming for people, which really directly impacts on sex, intimacy, and relationship as well.
Mm.
Yes. So
Yeah.
coming to a conclusion here, yeah, I just want to hand it over to you, Nicole, with anything else that you would like to share.
Mm. I truly believe that birth is a portal to profound change for our planet.
Mm,
You know, the way we bring in our young is super important. It's a job for the whole culture, not just the parents, because, they need support going into it. They need support, for the first few years of the children's lives. Um, it's a sort of paradigm shift in the way that we see birth. If we recognize how important it is for coming generations, then hopefully we would do what is required to safeguard that possibility of a baby being born into true welcome. Um, and that those early days, weeks, months of a child's life where they are imprinting what the world is going to be like for them and what their nervous system needs to be able to survive and thrive here. If we hold all of that as sacred, then we have the capacity to change the trajectory for our species. Of course, there's so many millions of us already here that didn't have that kind of arrival, but the whole birth into being approach is that it's never too late.
Please know that whether you are a man or a woman or a couple listening in to this podcast, you are welcome to get in touch about private mentoring, where I can personally support you to unlearn patriarchal sex, to establish yourselves together in the beyond, which is the most natural yet evolutionary way of exploring intimacy together, increasing the pleasure, the love, the fulfillment that you get to have as man and woman. Whether you're beginning this journey or whether you're already quite advanced, you're welcome to talk with me on a free connection call to see whether a confidential, private mentoring process is right for you. You can find the connection call links in the show notes. Yes, yes. And for anyone listening, there's an earlier episode on this podcast with Kate White, who her whole work is about restoring traumas and imprints that were not optimal, and how that can happen at any time, actually, which is part of Elena's work and the work that you do as well, Nicole. And yeah, incredible. So I'll make sure I put the links to these films that we've been mentioning. And I really want to encourage everyone, whether whatever gender you are, to let yourself receive these films, because it's truly a rebirthing experience to meet what it brings up for you. And it's a transformational experience just to watch it, truly, especially if you're willing to feel and breathe and experience your own feelings all the way through. There's such healing potential in becoming aware of this optimal state for birth. And the planetary impact is so profound, as you've mentioned. So, what is it that you are offering? I know that you have taken over the trainings for Elena, and would you like to share what that entails briefly and how people can find you?
Yeah. So I work with people either in a one-to-one capacity, online or in person. I do workshops. But once a year, we do the big annual training of new facilitators, and that involves an 8-day intensive where I call it the deep immersion retreat, where we basically generally hire out a whole venue and have a completely supportive environment where, we don't need to cook, we don't need to do anything beyond our own dishes, and just are completely supported by the environment to go right deep into the work of re-imprinting our own limbic systems around our own entry to life. So we spend 8 days doing that. And then we have an integration day and we zoom out and look at all of those experiences from a facilitation perspective. The Birth into Being method has lots of different processes and exercises that address different parts of generally our early life story, the story of being welcome, wanted, safe, and what our purpose is in being here and whether or not we can uncover. It's not a question whether or not we have it. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be here. Each conception is an absolute miracle. We all have a reason for being here. But if we can uncover that and our capacity to act on our dreams, to do the things that we said we wanted to do, that our soul is speaking to us to do, but that sometimes involves getting rid of some of the imprints that may have been there to keep us safe.
Yes.
Beliefs like it's safe to be small, all of those things. So we deal with all of that through the Birth into Being method. And yeah, it can be applied to women who are approaching birth or couples approaching conception, but it's also applicable to people in all sorts of life phases where they need to get out of their own way.
Yes, yes. And this reverence for the feminine is reverence for life because this is such a deeply sacred um, process that you guide for women in birth work and restoring the imprints and this kind of planetary scale suppression of the feminine is absolutely to everyone's detriment. And so it's so in favor of all of humanity to connect the dots and for everyone listening in your own psyche to see how relevant this is to the conversation of living beyond patriarchal sex, living beyond patriarchy in general, and that control because of the fear and terror of the unknown of the feminine and instead learn how to come into right relationship with that, starting with it within ourselves and in a relationship that is such a deep journey of dissolving the patriarchal imprints that don't allow this optimal full capacity for love and pleasure and connection that's can be such a guiding force through life. And so, yeah, thank you so much for coming and meeting with me. I'll make sure we put your links with this episode so everyone can find you. And thanks for doing such important work in the world. I love the birth realm, and that's why I've spent many years in the spiritual midwifery circles and trainings. Even though I'm not a woman who's physically given birth in this lifetime, I know how absolutely essential this knowledge and education is for everyone's benefit.
Absolutely. And, I feel like there's so many different places that we could have taken this conversation. Like
Yes.
all my ideas are going crazy. But yeah, there's so many reasons why retaining our capacity for natural physiological birth is important to the human species and our continued evolution.
100%. And there is so much more. And so I hope to have more conversations around this subject on this podcast coming forward. And yeah, just thanks again for your time and energy today. It's so important, everything that you've shared with us.
My pleasure. Lovely to see you again.
Yes. Thank you for sharing this episode with someone you know. And your comments and your podcast review, they're really impactful in helping more people to become part of this collective inquiry. So keep tuning into Beyond the Patriarchal Spell for much more to come, so we can all be part of shifting division into understanding and connection for ourselves and for the coming generations.